It's the aggregation of information in a way that you get the answers without you even knowing the right question.
We're going to end up like Wall-E, man.
Oh, 100%.
Those,
We're like Wall-E.
Those chubby fat guys that are floating around in the chairs. That's going to be us.
100%. Welcome to another episode of Dental Rift. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the CEO of SMC National. We provide new patients for dental offices just like yours.
I am Tanner Applegate. I am the co-founder and CEO of Unveiling Dental. We are a SaaS platform that helps integrate all of your different products together to make your life a whole lot easier for you.
That's awesome. So, okay, you actually have some stuff around private equity that I want to jump into that I think is going to impact a lot of people. But before we get into that, and it doesn't matter, like it's going to impact dental, but private equity is really across the board is going to be changing in business in general because of what's coming down the pipeline in 2023. But before we jump into that, I actually have a couple things that I wanted to go over. So OpenAI, have you used that yet?
Yep. Playing around with ChatGPT and all those things for sure. Yeah. Love that stuff.
So I want to jump into this. So if you don't know what this is, you have to go look at it. And the easiest one you can go look at that you would be able to get instant like traction, like you start using it right away, no matter what age you are, no matter how much you're into AI or not into AI. It's called ChatGPT, and you create an account and you can ask this chat bot any question that you want, and it will actually start to create a write-up for you, but it's unique content. So here's what I did last night, Tanner. I put in there, I am going on a cruise to Mexico on this date. I would like the top restaurants in these towns. I would also like the top attractions in these areas. And it literally cranked out paragraphs. Boom, 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 boom. Then I texted it to my wife, and guess what my wife said? Who do you know in Mexico? Because I'll do this. I'll travel, and I'll say, oh, I know somebody in Australia, or I know somebody over here in this state. She said, who do you know in Mexico? And I said, I don't. This is a chat bot that did all of this. I've also been using it for like blogs. I've been using it for social media posts. I've been using it for emails, text messages, things that I need to have a little bit of depth to, that I don't want to use the brain power to sit there and rewrite. You know how you rewrite. It kind of does that for you. Also, I watched a video today where somebody actually created a whole website from ChatGPT, and then they used another AI bot to create images for the website, and they created the whole website with AI.
I don't doubt it. I mean, the other day I was with somebody trying to figure out kind of our messaging for our company. And then I went through and created like a B-reel video just based off of like our conversation. And it was like so easy, where I would have had to pay thousands of dollars before. I did it for free. And it's honestly like the thing that I want to call out for those that are kind of like haven't played around with things like ChatGPT or these other AI tools. I want to just make sure that you guys understand that this is like zero entry like level type of things. Like you can literally go in, you just make a free account, and it says like type your question, and you could put something dumb.
If you know how to type, you can use it. If you know how to type, you can use it.
So easy, and it will literally change your mind. Like 5 minutes, just go and spend 5 minutes on it, and it will change your world. Like it is insane.
Yeah, it's saving me a ton of time. Where before I used to have to like write something, I'd send it off to somebody, they would edit it, they'd send it to a QC, bring it back to me. Now I'm just like, put it in there, boom, one QC round, sometimes not even one QC round post. Okay, so here's the things I'm using it for.
It's also, I find myself too replacing Google. Like when I don't know an answer to something, I'll just go in and chat GPT, because they'll give me a better answer than having to go and search through 10 different solutions in Google.
If you don't need a link, I actually watched a whole video on this yesterday. If you don't need a link, ChatGPT is actually better than Google, because you're not going to have to wade through a bunch of trash to get to your answer. It's going to give you the answer right away. So let me just give you a couple uses that I'm using it for. Job descriptions.
Brilliant.
So you go and say, hey, man, I got it. Oh, if you're an entrepreneur, you understand this. Okay, we need to hire somebody for this position, and you're like, oh, I got to write I have to write the description. I have to write the duties. I have to write the responsibilities. I have to write the requirements. and then you go to all these sites and you have to like Frankenstein it together. You just type it in there and say, hey, and then you spend like 2 minutes editing it. No, I don't want that in there. Yeah, add this. It's that easy. Social posts, blogs, emails, video scripts is another huge one. So you could go in, as an example, someone did this. I watched a whole video on this. They typed in and they said, I want to write a 3-page essay on the economic crash of 2008 and give me one unique thing about that time that most people don't know. And it wrote this whole outline. It was like crazy. And so you can write whole video scripts around whatever you want, and then any topic that you want as well. And then here's another one, book reviews. So I was talking with somebody about a book. It was Conversations Worth Having. And I kind of forgot, like I understand the book and I kind of a bit higher level, but I was like, man, there were some key takeaways. And it's been years since I've read it. And I typed it in there. Give me the 3 main takeaways from the Conversations Worth Having. Boop, 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 boop. And like in 10 seconds, I had the whole synopsis of the book in front of me. And so it's really, really powerful.
It is. It's insane. And I think that my favorite thing about it is like, you and I are in a world where we're using it. Like we're on the TikTok world. I'm sure you're on TikTok ChatGPT too. And it's impressive how people are using it. What I recognize too is that we're still at the point of the spear with all of this, right?
Yeah.
Like the number of people that are actively actually using this or looking into this, it's so small that like those that have taken the time to do it, the amount of opportunity that you have in front of you just by being an early adopter is so huge.
It's huge. And not only that, this is just the beginning. So when I've used it in front of people who aren't really big AI people, or they don't understand it, or they don't think about it really, they're blown away by it. Like absolutely blown away by, wait. So this is just grabbing it from Google? No, this is original content that it's writing that is nowhere else in the world. This is original. And then you start asking it questions on top of what you've already wrote. And people are just like, how is it doing this? And it's because we're so used to these binary apps, right? Like text message. We have a text message. I text Tanner, he texts me back, and then I respond back, right? Like we're just used to that kind of ping pong. This is so much different because it's actually learning and growing and getting better as we speak. And every time we put an input into it, it's getting smarter and better. And so what most people don't realize too is like, okay, so you can go into ChatGPT, you can write up like a video script as an example. Then you can go into another site and you can have them give you images and B-roll. So it has AI that's creating B-roll or images. Then you can take your text, your video script, and do an AI voiceover on another app. And so then you can create a whole video, like you said, using multiple different apps. Create a whole video that's very, very useful that took very little brain power. You just had to like kind of go through and QC it, make sure it lines up with what you were trying to accomplish. And it creates the whole thing. Well, soon that will all be done in one place, right? We'll be able to go into one service, type in, hey, I want a video about how the recessions of years past have impacted the dental industry. And it's going to take it and be able to create you a video end to end without you doing anything around it.
I want to take this now to the next level kind of for our listeners and say, what does this look like in dental?
Yeah,
right? I have a few use cases that I've seen in dental that I think are fascinating, but how will definitely change what things look like in a dental office today in 1 year. So I want to start off with one of the examples I saw recently. I did a demo with a company who they had a voice bot that would call in and do insurance verifications over the phone, right? Like you can go get a lot of them from clearinghouses, you can get a lot of them from the web, but there's still unfortunately, a large majority that you still have to call in and get it done, right? And so this whole company was around, let me call in and automatically go through this chat of going through the wait period, and then getting on with the agent and asking the questions for these things, and also having responses to them. The product that I saw was good. I mean, it was definitely older iterations of AI, but it just kind of triggered to me the idea of like, with this technology of like ChatGPT, where the responses are so authentic and they're so real, this will be able, and to be able to take that with AI, where now you can get voice dialects that don't sound like a robot, that sound like a real, genuine person, putting those things together and giving it into the hands of dentists to be able to say, hey, I'm going to go and verify insurances. Now all of a sudden that becomes such a cheap thing to do to make sure that it's accurate for your patients. It's so crazy.
So here's the crazy thing about it too, is like you can tell it, the ChatGPT, for those who haven't used it, you can tell it what emotion you want it to write in. So you could say, I want it to be assertive. I want it to be passionate. I want it to be exciting. I want it to be, angry. And it will write in that format. So you can literally, start off with a certain level of aggression and then kind of, ratchet it up as you go along if you're not getting what you want. So it's 100. And then again, it's going to learn. So this isn't something that's just going to do it one time and then it fails and it doesn't work. No, it's going to learn, get better and better. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Where else do you think it's going to be able to be used in dental?
Where it will be used, I think it'll honestly be used in anything that is not clinically based right now. Like from a diagnostic perspective, obviously we're seeing that in x-rays and such, but be able to go in and actually do the work, we still haven't done all of the physical aspects of it. But things like answering phones, I think answering phones becomes automated in the future. Right now, again, we have a voice robot that's able to answer all these phones perfectly and have a very high scheduling rate. Right. I think that anything that has to do with treatment planning and treatment presentation, I think becomes AI based and robot based, as long as you can still kind of maintain that human element to somehow. Yeah. Right. There is still that relationship based in the, especially when it comes to finances. But I honestly think that anything that is not
what could it be used
in nature?
What would you, if you worked in a DSO or if you worked in a dental office, what would you use ChatGPT for today? Like right now?
Great question. I like your examples of job postings because I remember when we were a smaller DSO of 3 to 4 locations, I was one that had to do those and it was the worst. It was because you didn't want to put just one paragraph.
No, you can't.
Right. You wanted to make sure you had good detail in it and made it exciting for the person applying. And so, yeah, that was a brilliant one.
I challenge anybody right now to go, if you have to do job postings, go do it in there. Your mind's going to be blown by how good it is able to do it. And then you can add things to it. You can say, well, I want for this kind of job or this, I want it to be more this way. And it will just rewrite it in a second without any energy from you. I think social media is another big one where you can just you don't need a copywriter. You don't need somebody who's a genius. You just type in, write me a social, because it's smart enough to know the difference between a blog post, a YouTube description, and a LinkedIn post. It knows the difference. It'll even include hashtags in the post, depending on where you want to post it. So I think that's huge. I think anything around emails, text messages, if you're sending a text message to your patients or an email to your patients or an email to your team to communicate or text message, why sit there and write the whole thing up? You can just put the inputs that you want in it and it'll write it for you.
Yeah. I think that also as you're sitting there saying that, there's a lot of times where you need to take information. For example, if you're in an emerging group, you've made some big decisions that are going to change the organization and you need to make kind of a public statement about it. As a leader, a lot of the times writing is not our excellence. So you'd be able to say, hey, here's some bullet points, put it in this tone and make it available to people. And all of a sudden it'll write this good thing that you can then send out. That's a great idea too.
Yeah, any kind of higher level communication, even personal communication, to be honest with you. I was playing with it. I was write an apology email or write an apology text to my wife of how sorry I am for leaving the toilet seat open all the time. And it was writing these very apologetic text messages, I'm sorry. And then I would say, okay, now create a plan on how that I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen anymore. And it created a whole plan of here's what I'm going to do in the future, right? So it's pretty amazing on what it can do.
I'm interested to see what type of inputs you'll be able to put into it in the future. Because right now, I wanted to be able to say, hey, go and rewrite this website in this type of forming, and it won't pull that input in, right?
Yeah, no, it won't. And so no links. Yeah,
right.
Here's
so that's why
here's a shortcoming.
I'm excited to see what it can do.
I saw I was okay, I want to plan a cruise to these countries. And so it planned the whole thing and it was day one, but then I was okay, what's the best cruise ship that's going to actually be able to make that happen? And it's oh, we can't, it doesn't recommend that yet. I think that's what's leaving the door open for Google, because this is either going to eat Google's lunch or Google's going to take over and use AI and tie it into all the data that it already has. So imagine now Chat GPT with a search engine with links behind it saying, okay, what is the best place to do XYZ? Or let's just say, give me a cruise ship that goes to these countries, and plan my whole cruise and all the excursions and flights and all those things. Imagine having something like a Google, because I can get all that information from Google, but it takes time to logistically figure it all out. Yeah, imagine Google being able to do that for you. Well, where it gets tricky is Google really giving me the best thing, or are they giving me the advertisement? So that's the part that needs to be worked out.
That's what I was thinking about too, because right now Google, yes, it gives you 20 options that you have to pick from, right? So whether that's like the right wording that calls out to you or whatever, why you select the one that you do, but advertisements are on first. So if it's a ChatGPT that's only giving you one option, yeah, are they giving you only one option, or are they giving you multiple options now?
Yeah, because
where does advertising come in?
We're at the stage now. It's like, I was talking with somebody about this yesterday, and it's like, okay, so imagine like 150 years ago, I walked into a library and had every book that was ever written in that library. Your brain's going to be like, well, that's really cool, but you still have to like sort it. You still have to read it, and you could spend the rest of your life reading them, and you wouldn't read them all. So it's like, how do I get this information faster? And that's what we've done with the internet. So now online, you have all the information there, and it's all categorized. But now it's still like, I'll give you an example. I'm struggling because I was like, how do I sleep better at night? And it's like, okay, well, here's the 10 things that you need to do to sleep better at night, to get better quality sleep. And then but they're so diverse. It's like, well, diet. And then it's like how you can, what you consume with your eyes and your ears and those kind of things. And then it's like, sleep apnea. Are you snoring? Are you right? And it's like and it's breaking off into all these separate categories that I kind of got overwhelmed, where I'm like, man, I don't want to go through and go figure out each one of these things, because each one of them is a rabbit hole of several hours. I'd rather just have the answer of like, here's what you need to do, right? So then I'm looking into like wearables, like the ring you can wear, the wrist thing you can wear. And is that going to solve it? Am I going to just pay like 10, $20 a month just to have data that doesn't necessarily isn't actionable? So playing around with all of those.
You know who I blame for all of this?
Huh?
TikTok. Everyone else before, it was kind of like I had to go follow that person to get information about them, or I had to go do these other things like YouTube, right? Like I had to go and find creators that were of my interest. But now TikTok will literally tell you your interests and then keep it coming without you even asking for it.
Yeah.
Right. And so now you're saying, I want to go and get all these answers, but I want it to be told to me what my answers are without even having to ask the right question. That's totally a TikTok outcome.
It is. And then ChatGPT gets us, that's the interesting thing. ChatGPT gets us one step closer to that. Like we're closer, one step. Right. It's the aggregation of information in a way that you get the answers without you even knowing the right question.
We're going to end up like Wall-E, man.
Oh, 100%.
Those, like Wall-E. Those chubby fat guys that are floating around on the chairs. That's going to be us.
100%. Okay, so I think we've exhausted that conversation. So here's another one for you. So I was in a Facebook group. Every good story starts in a Facebook group. and I'm in a Facebook group, and I'm reading through the comments, and someone's like, man, I can't find good team members and blah, 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 blah. And then everybody starts chiming in underneath them that they cannot find good employees. I can't find good teammates. I can't, right? And everybody's complaining about it.
Multiple people. Problem.
Yeah, age-old problem, right? But I started asking myself, is this a you problem? Right? Yeah. At what point do you say, this is a me problem? And then number two, or is it an industry problem? Or is there something bigger at play here? And I started really thinking through, like, at what point do I turn the corner? If I can't find anybody to work, at what point do I look at myself and say, okay, everybody's quitting, right? And I know this is like the culture thing, right? So it's like, okay, well, if you create a culture that people want to work at, but what if people don't even want to work at an office? Or what if people, are leaving the industry? I just thought, again, I know we've talked about this before, but I feel like it's shifting a little bit.
My thoughts on this, as you're sitting there saying that, My wife is a big Swiftie, I think they're called, right? Taylor Swift fan. So she'll play music in the car, whatever we're doing. And one of her newest songs, there's a line in it that I love that she's like, like, I'm always staring. I'm willing to stare at the sun, but never in the mirror. Right. And I think that line represents so much of the world that we're in right now, right? Like you can be a dentist and own a practice and be technically a leader without actually being a leader, right? Like never looking in the mirror and recognizing, oh, people don't want to work with me because of who I am or because of this environment that I've created, et cetera. And it's amazing how much that just becomes the norm of like, hey, I'm not going to look in the mirror and recognize that I am the problem a lot of the times in this. That's why I really kind of enjoyed that song actually even called that out amongst this newer generation of like, hey, I am the problem and it's me that needs to fix these things. And I think that's the same thing. Like, it's funny how that has been translated to like TikTok, where there's this like trend where like people are taking their spouse and like forcing them to sing that song. I'm like, how ironic that's happening, that they're forcing somebody else to say that I'm the problem. When in reality, it's just kind of defeating the whole purpose of the song.
Well,
but I think that's honestly what the world has come down to, is everyone thinking that everyone else is the problem without recognizing that there's a lot of internal growth and development that they need to have.
So two things on that. So first of all, that I agree. And it's an echo chamber too. There's an echo chamber effect because all these dentists are in this Facebook group and they're all saying the same thing. Like, I can't and so you get confirmation bias. Oh yeah, it's clearly not me. It can't be me.
Yeah.
Right. I can't be the problem. And this happens in politics. This happens in everything, right? And social media is actually the culprit, because social media is really good at bringing the same people who like the same things into the same room, who say the same things, that we all look at the same comments and go, oh, clearly this is an issue, right? And then the second thing on that, so you got this echo chamber and this confirmation bias that comes into that. And the second thing is, once it's everybody else's fault, you lose complete control. Now there's part of us as humans, I think we like that, because then it's like, yeah, it is what it is. We're not going to be able to do anything about it. It just stinks. And that's the way that the world works. But I hate that. Like, personally, I hate thinking like that, even if it may be true, because there are circumstances that we can't control and that we can't control the outcomes. But I like to focus on what I can control. And I would rather focus on me, even though I'm only 10% of the problem. As an example, like if I'm 10% of the problem, I'd rather focus on my 10% than somebody else's 90, because I can actually change that. I can actually control that. Where the 90, I can't control any of that.
Yep. I think that's the secret to life right there, is recognizing what you can control and controlling it, right? Like the extreme ownership. I think it goes the same thing. Like, we could go into a recession and all of a sudden, like, nobody's going to the dental office, but the people that buckle down and master, okay, how do I get a patient to come to my office? Like, they're going to be light years ahead of everybody else because of the changing tides.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just the same thing with this. Yes, you may end up being in an environment where the amount of people that are applying for jobs is significantly lower than the same thing 5 years ago, but it's the people that master, how do I actually, like, of those that are applying, right? Maybe there's only 10 applying right now. If I can get all 10 of those to apply to my job posting, now all of a sudden I get the pick of the litter, where the next people only get 9 to choose from, right? Or the next people only get 8, right? So it's just mastering what you can master. And yes, it may be harder, but yeah, I completely agree. I think that's the secret to life, not just business, not just leadership, not anything. It's the secret to life, is figuring out what you can control and then making sure that you focus on that.
Yeah. And then where it gets tricky, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, is like, what should I focus on then? So I've identified what I can control. And then it's picking one of those things that you can control and putting 100% of your effort into that, and just attacking it like a bulldog. Because in business, especially, personally too, there's 100 different things that I can control, or maybe 1,000,000 different things that I can control, that I could go and focus my energy. But how do you pick the right thing to go focus your energy? Right. So it goes back to like that analogy I gave with my sleep. I'm trying to get better sleep. So it's like, okay, I can put on a ring that tracks all my sleeping. I can go study diet. I can go study sleep itself. I can go look at sleep apnea, and there's like 5 or 6 different things that I can go learn and rabbit trail on all of them. And one of them may or may not be the right answer, but how do I actually pick the right one? And in business, what I've learned, this is something that's really helped me, is that focus on one thing that's at the beginning of the process that's your biggest restraint. So what is actually holding you back? So as an example of it with the dental office, is the amount of treatment that you present, is that the biggest problem that you face right now? Probably not. Is it the number of team members that you have? Or is it how many new patients you're getting? Right? So which one is your biggest restraint right now? Which one's holding you back that you can't overcome? So if you have no team members, it doesn't matter how many new patients you have. It doesn't matter how much treatment you present on average. All it matters is hiring more people. Once you solve that and you just attack that like a bulldog, then move on to the next part. Okay, how do we get more new patients now that we have more team members? And then once you master that, then you move on to the next one. That's how I've worked through those. How, do you tackle it the same way, or do you look at it differently?
I do it very differently. I'm trying to look up the book that was very instrumental in my mind. I mean, in my history with this. His name was The Goal. Have you ever read The Goal by
Nope.
Goldratt? His last name's Goldratt. So it's about kind of identifying again that critical piece in a system, and they do it in a manufacturing system type of analogy. It's written in a story. It's not written in like a very kind of like, it's a fictional story that has a very business principle.
What's it called? The Goal?
The Goal, yes. So Elijah, I think that's how you spell it. Elijah M. Goldratt is kind of the main guy that wrote it. So his whole thing is, it's about finding that the biggest issue in your whole process. Right. And this is what I did all the time in DSOs. I'd go and I'd map out, okay, what is the process from beginning to end? You're saying you start at the process and just start knocking things out. My biggest thing was I would start listing, okay, what are all the problems? And then I identify, if I were to fix this, what is going to be the effort required and what's going to be the result of it. Right. And so the result to effort ratio is how I would go through and decide, okay, this is the number one thing for me to focus on, because I want to get that lowest hanging fruit first and say, okay, what's the highest result I can get for the least amount of effort right now from either me or my team.
So let me clarify really quickly. So I look at the biggest restraint. So as an example, I kind of look at it like an assembly line. So this is how I think about it. So imagine that you have this factory and you're going end to end, right? And that factory line, your job's to produce whatever, widgets or whatever, right? And so right now, you in marketing, you can produce 10 widget sales opportunities. In sales, you can sell 10 widget opportunities, but in production, you can only produce 5 widgets. Well, it doesn't matter that your marketing can do 10 and your sales can do 10, because you can only produce 5. So the only place to focus your energy, it doesn't even matter if you put your energy anywhere else, is to how do we make more widgets? How do we get to be able to produce 15 widgets? And then when you're done with that, now you have a marketing and sales problem. So you go back to that marketing and sales issue. I think
that's exactly right.
Okay.
Theory of constraints is what we're talking about.
Okay.
Right. What is your biggest constraint right now? And if you were to fix it, what is the return that you get from it? Because sometimes your biggest constraint also is going to be a huge lift to actually fix it.
Yes.
Right.
It might take
and
3
so
years.
That's why I say, okay, what's maybe not the biggest constraint in my world, but what's the constraint to result ratio if I were to fix it?
So in dental right now, what's the biggest restraint that most people are facing, would you say?
I do think that it is hiring, but I have a theory that the lack of data accessibility is a huge issue, and people don't actually know truly what their biggest constraints are in their dental journey. Right? Like an example to me is people say, oh, I've got a 98% collections rate because that's what the industry's taught them to look at forever. And that they say, okay, my RCM journey is fine. But the reality is like, no, you could have a huge increase in that you just don't know that you could have. Right. And it's because you don't have the data to see what is wrong in this process.
People are being gaslit in the dental industry by like fake data. And then a lot of people take advantage of that too, right? So a lot of people are like, no, that's good. This data's over here is good. You don't have to look over here. And then once you open it up, I just know marketing really well. Marketing is a great example. It's like, no, you had a lot of new patients, or your ROI is good. And it's like, okay, but how are you even measuring that? And how do you know, like you only spend $100 on marketing. So yeah, that's easy to get a good ROI for that $100, but can you scale it? It's very interesting. So I just typed
it's
in.
the same thing too with like these data tools, like going in and getting a DI or Jarvis or whatever. Like, hey, I've got a 85% retention rate, but what I'm not recognizing is that number is actually going to go down to 65% the week before the appointments because my hygienist forced everyone to get an appointment, even though they have no intention of keeping it. Right. So like, but there's nowhere in the data to be able to say, hey, let's go retroactively say, okay, what has been our retention rate of those that have actually scheduled?
Yeah. Can you see my screen right
it's
here?
It's wild. I can. Yeah. I just ChatGPT'd the book summary as well.
So it broke it all down. It gave us everything that we needed to know about the book. So I think that's a good way.
I said, give me the top 5 bullet points. And so mine was a lot shorter than yours.
Yeah, I said, give me the overall view of the book, the goal, and by Elijah. That's all I put. And that's not even his name, and it still figured it out.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I did
good
the same
stuff.
thing.
You have a good one.